Hi guys, I'm Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andy, and welcome to our 5th episode of the Deco Mix. Today our guest is Graham Blackmore.
So Andy and I have known Graham for many years, and Graham's a highly rated GUE instructor examiner, tech instructor, CCR instructor. And what we're going to do today is talk to Graham about his experiences of diving in Asia and about diving in Europe as well, particularly Italy and Malin Head. So without further ado, let's welcome Graham to the Deco Mix podcast. So welcome everybody to our latest episode of the Deco Mix podcast. And we are really excited here to have one of our long-term friends, Dr. Graham Blackmore. Now, Graham is a GUE instructor examiner, tech instructor, CCR instructor for GUE. I mean, there's not much that he can't do. So we're really excited. What we want to do is talk to him about diving in Asia and his experiences there, because Graham and I have known each other for quite a while, shall we say. We won't give it away because, let's be honest, we are young at heart. And then maybe some talking about diving, because Graham's now moved back to the UK, or for a few years now, and we want to talk about some diving in Europe and especially sort of Malin Head and Italy. So welcome, Graham.
Hey, nice to see you both again.
Good to see you. Long time.
It's been a while since we've been face to face with each other. Yeah, so it's good that we've got the technology now. We can actually sort of see each other face to face as such on the video. So yeah, Graham, so like I was saying, mate, we've known each other, well, it is pushing 20 years, and back in the dark old days, or the good old days, shall we say, pre-Zoom, let's go that way.
Yeah, there you go. I know, I remember a fresh-faced young man coming in from the UK, regaling us of stories of Stony Cove and Bobby Sand and things like that, and then having to enjoy the diving in Hong Kong, right?
Oh yeah, it was an experience coming from the UK where it was cold, and then coming to Hong Kong where everybody was like, oh, it's down to 18 degrees, it's freezing. And I'm like, what? I'm wearing a 3mm wetsuit. And nowadays it's I'm wearing a dry suit all year round. It doesn't matter whether it's 30 degrees or whether it's 3 degrees.
I think the first tech dive I ever did in one of the quarries in the UK, I actually thought I had brain cancer because my head was tingling, and I just realized that it wasn't brain cancer. I just didn't have a good hood on. So that was certainly a fun learning experience. But like you say, I've pretty much done the opposite to you, where you learned to dive in the UK and then came to Hong Kong. And I actually learned to dive in Hong Kong and then sort of ended up back in the UK. So it's an interesting comparison. And certainly it took me a while to get used to the water temperatures. But once you get used to it, there's really some super diving to be done in this part of the world.
So what's okay, well, we'll come back to the UK and sort of in Europe, but if you learn in Asia, I mean, we know now that you basically you do, when we can travel, you travel to Asia for a lot of your training. I mean, you're one of the most well-known GUE instructors and instructor trainers in Asia. And I know, Andy and I have done training with you over the years.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, we learned from others as well, so it's okay. But no,
fill in the gaps, right?
Yeah, you've done a lot over here, and I mean, tell us about what your experiences are from diving in Asia. I mean, you've done Korea, you've done Japan, you've done Philippines, everywhere, right? I mean, I've never been to Japan and Korea. I think it'd be quite cool up there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I trained as a marine biologist in Hong Kong first, and that's why I learned to dive. I've always been interested in the sea and water generally. So the PhD gave me an opportunity to have a bit more time and money to learn diving in Hong Kong. I've probably done more than 1,000 dives in Hong Kong as part of the research and things like that. And then in order to help with that research diving, I kind of got into technical diving. I thought if I carried more equipment for fun diving, it would make the research diving a bit easier. And that technical diving kind of opened up more diving around the region. So learned in Hong Kong, and then of course went to the Philippines and did a lot of diving in the Philippines. So mostly deep reef diving, to be honest, in the early years. Although there is some really nice wreck diving to be had in the Philippines, it was mostly reef diving. And then I kind of got hooked by this whole idea of GUE and sort of went down that slippery slope. And that's really taken me a bit further afield in Asia. So did some really great diving at Singapore or off the coast of Malaysia on the Prince of Wales and the Repulse and tankers like the Seven Skies. Yep. Although I think, unfortunately, those superb wrecks, yeah, exactly, they've been salvaged out of existence. And I don't know if anybody's dived them recently, whether there's anything left, but the rumors are there is just a hole in the sand, basically. Everything's been taken away, but I can't say for sure if that's true, but it's obviously the disrespect for a war grave is one thing, and completely wrong, but you know, it's a massive loss to diving, because that was really some fantastic diving to be done there. And interestingly, that both the Repulse and the Prince of Wales are King George V battleships. So I think they're version 3, and we've dived a very famous King George V version 2 in Malin Head. So maybe we'll talk about that in a while, see where the conversation goes.
Yeah,
so so wreck diving off the coast of Malaysia on those sort of famous iconic wrecks. But then, like you alluded to, I've been lucky enough to travel to Japan and dive there, and there's some really fantastic diving in Japan, and really beautiful and fantastic and interesting place, Japan. And one of the places we dived there, we've been watched by Mount Fuji, so it's super picturesque to sort of surface from a dive and have this like picture postcard perfect cone volcano in the background, and then obviously sleeping on tatami mats and really having the full Japanese experience is just great.
But what's been really cool is also that, you know, because GUE does focus on communities, right, and building communities, and you know, we're trying with GUE Hong Kong, we're growing and getting more and more divers as we train over here. But you've been really, over the years, I mean, you introduced me to GUE actually. Way back,
it's my fault, sorry.
Yeah, 2004 when I did my fundamentals.
So it was me actually. I did my fundamentals with you, Graham.
And then you've been like one of the ones who, over in Asia, you've developed so many, you know, quite a few divers, instructors who've then gone on to be really active members of their respective GUE communities. And so, you know, that's the real beauty of it. What you're just sort of describing, all these dives actually really achievable within the community itself, right? And you know, you're always made to feel welcome when you go to these places. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think I'm obviously in a privileged position to be an instructor, and obviously you do somewhat get the red carpet rolled out, and really almost a red carpet rolled out in many Asian countries. You feel a little bit like a pop star when you arrive. Yeah. You know, there's someone waiting to pick you up, and they look after you like a king for the duration you're there. But you know, wherever you go in the world, you just put a post up on the internet or make some inquiries with, you know, someone knows someone in most of these communities, and even as a diver, you can turn up, shake hands, and go and do some pretty cool diving. I've got a good friend who lives in Germany, and pre-COVID, he was traveling the world as part of his work, and he always used to try and schedule on a day or two everywhere he went. And he usually could turn up and do a Tech 2 dive or a, you know, extended cave dive. And that's really one of the super super cool things with GUE, I would say, is the community based stuff. So everywhere you go, you can find someone who will take you and happily show you their local diving, which is like really nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, look, that local diving sort of and the community aspect, that's what really appealed to me, and I know Andy feels pretty the same as well. You know, it is something very special about the agency that, you know, and you're right, in Asia here we get the red carpet rolled out, we're treated like princes or kings, and I'll be the prince, you can be the king.
There you go.
I'll let you have that one. But yeah, it is really, really special. I do, you know, you do remember, you alluded earlier on to meeting me as a young lad coming out from the UK, and I remember actually when I met you first, it was in Portugalera, and it was like I was a schoolboy being told off because the big boys were coming into town to do a dive, and you mentioned, like, you know, being able to just roll up and do a deep dive or do a tech dive with some friends, and this was right, you know, pretty much at the beginning of GUE in Asia, and I remember I was doing my tech course, the tech deep course at the time, and I got told by Paul, my the instructor at the time,
yeah.
And Paul said, "Oh, I've got some friends coming in this afternoon. We're going to go on a deep dive. You can't come because you're not qualified." And it was you. It was you, and what, I think Andy Dyer was there, and a couple of others. But I do remember like that. Literally, I do. It was almost 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday, because I remember sitting there, like standing on the beach, basically watching you guys get on the banker, and then I was like, "Oh, why can't I go?" And then it was literally like a lost puppy saying goodbye to his owner for the day. And I was like, "Oh, why can't I do it?" And that sort of got me into it. Like, actually, I want to be that. I want to do that, right? And then so I, you know, from that very sort of moment, like almost 20 years ago, just thinking, I want to do that. And then, yeah, I've been lucky enough, like you yourself, to do those dives and to travel these places and do it. So it's really quite interesting how everything sort of like works out in the end. But since then, you've kind of like you've done your. I mean, now you come back to Asia and you teach and you build the communities and you teach your CCR courses, your Tech 1, Tech 2 courses. You know, you are very, very highly qualified within the GUE system. You know, but then you've kind of like moved back to the UK. I can't remember how many years ago has it been now?
I'm not really sure how to set a date on that, because I think for the last 2 years I can say I've been living in the UK because I haven't been doing the international travel. I think I probably moved back properly about 5 or 6 years ago, but even then I was doing like probably in Hong Kong 5-6 times a year and maybe 10 trips a year to Asia. And you know, I pretty much moved back so I obviously had to I wanted to keep diving in Asia because I loved the diving. I had some credibility or some reputation, so people wanted to dive with me or do courses with me in Asia, which is why I was doing the travel between like a home life and a working life. But for the last 2 years, I've been here almost exclusively. Like, I've traveled to Asia once in the last 2 years, which is just incredible. You know, that's the longest I've been out of Asia since 1991, which is a bit terrifying. And you can probably realize why this beard is turning from ginger to white slowly.
It's tinged.
So, but you're teaching in the UK as well now, right? I mean, you're running a dive business in the UK.
I mean, I've got a company that I instruct through, and I have a friendly dive shop that I work with in Poole in the south coast of the UK. I'm doing a bit of teaching here. I think the wreck diving in the coastal waters of the UK is incredible, like world class. wreck diving, and but it's subject to weather. So if we think about the Philippines, out of 100 days, you'd probably dive 95 or even 99 of them. And you might lose a day here and there to a typhoon or Habagat, the strong seasonal winds. But generally, you could get in diving most days of the year. And I would say even in the summer, in the UK, you've got something like a 30% chance of losing that to poor weather. So it does make it quite difficult to schedule a class. So if you wanted to do a tech class with a deep diving component, it's quite challenging for people to come into the UK. Right, I'm here for these specific days and I want to achieve this course. That would be a challenge. So the UK diving tends to be to British people who are based locally, and we tend to have a bit more of a flexible schedule and a weekend based thing. So, you know, okay, we've been blown out for these dives. We'll do them. We'll try and do it next weekend or whenever. So, but you know, when you get it good, it's world class, like really world class, and real wrecks with real histories, and the opportunity to do exploration as well. So, you know, even in places which are frequently dived, you don't have to travel very far before the skipper's got unknowns that they'd love to have.
But what are you doing? I mean,
you
charter a boat. I mean, you have your own dive equipment basically, and you charter a boat then for the day, and you go out with. So how does it work actually? I don't know.
Yeah, that tends to be the case. So it's a little bit different, for example, than going to the Philippines, where you turn up with a suitcase and they provide a dive guide, or they're happy. You know, once you establish a relationship, they're probably happy for you to go take the boat out for yourself, and obviously you pay for that. But here it tends to be a bit more. Because of the sea conditions, the boats are bigger. So typically the boats would be like 8 or 12 people on board. And then you're looking at 50. Well, you know, for a non-technical dive, it could be £20. But generally, when you get into the tech diving, you might have to travel a bit further, or the skipper's afloat for a bit longer. So you're probably looking at £50. So what's that? 75 US dollars
for the boat alone, basically, plus gas, plus the other stuff.
Per person for the boat.
Per person for the boat. Okay,
yeah, exactly. And then you pay for the gas on top of that. And then I would say that in Asia, you'd be unusual if you had your own tanks. You know, that's really part of the service of the dive center is providing the tanks. Whereas here, it's the other way around. It's quite uncommon to be able to rent tanks other than as part of doing a course. Obviously, if you wanted to do an open water course, the dive shop wouldn't expect you to buy a tank, for example, to do the course. So the dive shop would have tanks for that. But once you get into technical diving, twin sets, in reality, most people have their own gear. So it's quite a difference. And it feeds back into the GUE side of things. So you meet people and then you borrow their gear or their friend's gear. And you know, most technical divers would have at least 2 sets of tanks, for example. So when you come in, you can borrow tanks off a friend, or, you know, and there's quite a nice community spirit in the UK and broadly in Europe with that kind of thing. So people understand you're not going to get on your Cathay Pacific with a set of double tanks and then fly to go diving. So that's all provided you know, by the community. And then of course there are dive centers that will provide a service a little bit more like an Asian dive center. And then there's a famous GUE center in Croatia. And they really sort of give you the one-stop service, although it does tend to be more individual diving as opposed to like dive guide led. So they you know, they're almost like providing a taxi service out to the dive site as opposed to like the full service situation. you are a bit more independent because of that, but you're a bit more responsible because of that as well. So there tends to be less help with gearing up and things like that. So we've all seen it in Asia, where you roll your dive bag into the dive shop, go to the restaurant for dinner, come the next morning, and all your gear's been set up for you, and you almost,
and tank is analyzed as well.
Yeah, exactly, go like that, and they almost dress you, right, and push you into the water. So I mean, I certainly enjoy that aspect of things, but these days, you know, diving more in Europe, you're lucky if someone helps you put your fins on. So that's you know, when you've got 100 kilos of dive equipment on, it can be a little bit of a challenge, like putting fins on. So sometimes someone helping with that can be truly appreciated. So that's a totally different experience in reality.
I'm just glad, Graham, that you said that people can come in and borrow cylinders and gear, so that when I start coming back a little bit more with the family back to the UK, I know who I'm going to be calling, because I'm not going to be so
but I'm happy to help people with that. If you're coming to the UK, I you know, I do have a couple of twin sets. I've got a few.
But Graham, I'll make a bet. I'll make a bet that Mr. Andrew Couch will have his own twin sets within 6 months, and probably not just one. So and a fleet of scooters, probably. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, because I like.
It sounds like a good plan, actually. I mean, it's.
I like to just buy stuff, and of course, Graham, I'll need somewhere to store all of the stuff. So and sometimes well, I'm not in the UK, so you know, you'll probably end up with another couple of sets of twin tanks in your garage.
No problem. I can happily make sure they're dived frequently and looked after. Don't you worry. No, it's a little bit of adjustment here with the diving in terms of those kind of things. And then, as we talked about originally, the temperature of the water obviously has a you know, a big effect on the diving. And I think I was one of the first people in Hong Kong to start using dry suits a bit more regularly. I know I was the first person to import DUI dry suits into Hong Kong, and I just remember doing a research dive in the middle of winter in Hong Kong, and the water temperature was like 15 degrees C, and I'd been to the dive center and I bought myself a 3mm hood, and you know, we were doing 1-2 hours in the water, relatively shallow stuff, surveying corals and things, but thinking, whoa, this cold water diving is hard work. And then you kind of fast forward a bit, and now I would consider like 15 as almost tropical, you know, and no need to wear gloves and hoods in those kind of temperatures now. So
what temperatures are we looking at right now in the UK? I mean, what's the temperature, and what setup do you normally wear then? I mean, dry suit obviously, but what undergarments, heating vest, and what is
I think like the is quite benign in terms of temperatures, but like summer temperatures in shallow water could be 15 degrees C, for example. Interestingly, I did a dive with my son on Monday, and it was 17, 18 in the shallow water off a beach here, which is really nice. So it was funny. He hadn't dived for 2 years, and the last time was in the Philippines. It was funny to take him off on his last day of school holidays for his first British dive. And I mean, I asked him afterwards, like, which do you prefer? Oh, Philippines, obviously. I mean, but I'm not sure whether that was diving related or mango shake related, because you know, he couldn't have mango shake after diving in the UK. But I mean, he got out of the water and he was beaming, which for a teenager, if you're a parent, you probably realise is quite uncommon. So I was pretty happy about that. But then winter time in the sea, you probably get 7 or 8 degrees C, and then really it's I would say, like, once you get into single figures, you're probably into dry gloves territory and thin undergarments. And then when you start pushing the dive times a bit more, you probably these days looking at some form of active heating to make that a bit more comfortable. So 2 summers ago, I did a dive in Switzerland, in Lake Thun. We were actually looking for Oliver Isler's habitat, which sunk there a few years ago. That was something crazy, like 150 meters deep, but it was 4 degrees on the bottom. And even on the ascent, we came up to like 70 meters. It's still 4 degrees C, and you really had to get up above 20 meters before it started warming up, and in the water for like 4 hours. And pretty different, you know, where almost like you're flushing water through your hood sometimes in Asia, because you're hot on Deco there. It's quite a difference. But having said that, we talk about Asia. I think some of the coldest diving I've done has been in Korea. And it's funny when I talk to I told people, oh, I'm going to Korea for diving. Oh, it must be lovely and warm over there. And I was like, you do realize that the Winter Olympics were just held in Korea, don't you? Yeah, exactly. I was there a couple of weeks before or after the Winter Olympics, and we got out of the sea and I hung my dry suit up, and it actually had an icicle on the boot in seawater. So that sort of shows you how cold the water was. And you know, I looked at my computer and it was showing -2 at the surface. So the water was actually freezing close to the shore. When we were a bit further off the shore, it wasn't freezing. But yeah, it was -2 at the surface. It warmed up a bit after that on the way down, and then it was 1 degree on the bottom. So that was pretty cold, and heat for that is super nice. But adding heat adds a whole bunch of complication and technical aspects and cost as well. So you know, it's definitely something to think about before going down that route. But I would say you can do some really nice diving, like in Italy, for example, where year round, below the thermocline, it would never be less than 13 degrees C. So you can do some really nice diving in Italy. And in fact, I just got back from a trip a few weeks ago, a few months probably now, but to the northwest coast of Italy, so around Genoa region, so the Ligurian coast, and they've got some super nice diving there. Did you want to show a couple of pictures of that kind of diving?
Yeah, some pictures, yeah, I was going to say we want to talk about sort of Italy, because I know you go there. Well, I did my Tech 1 with you there. What was that? 5 years ago now?
Yeah, exactly. So that was a super nice trip there, and that's pretty much exactly that area. So if I go to,
so go down, try and share the screen.
There you go.
There you go.
Wow.
Okay, so through the powers of editing, that might even look slightly better than what it does there. But that's the Haven, or the Haven wreck, which is as far as I'm aware, the biggest diveable shipwreck in the world. And that's these 2 divers are about 45 meters, and you can see like the smokestack and masts and the accommodation tower of this super tanker, but that's a 400-meter long wreck. And pretty much you can do a recreational dive on the top of the tower. I think it comes up to about 20 meters. Yeah. There at the very top of the picture. The deck level's at 50 and the propellers at 80 something meters. So I mean, it's just crazy to think about that level of diving. This is sunk about less than 10 minutes from the port. So it's a really great dive. I mean, fantastic visibility and loads to see, and something for everybody in reality. I think I've done like 4 or 5 dives there, and really only started to scratch the surface of what you can see on a dive like that. So
so any wreck penetration dive, or is it more around?
Yeah, no, there's really some wreck penetration. So actually, can you see the propeller in this picture?
Yes.
Or
yeah, just about in the haze.
So it's a single propeller, and once you get near the bottom, it is kind of hazy. So up on the deck level, and I'll show another picture, you can really have like incredible visibility. Down near the bottom, it gets a bit more hazy, but this is, I think it's a 5 or 6 bladed prop. But you can see the blades of the prop are in the range of 1.5 to 2 meters for the blade of the prop. But consider this is pushing along 400 meters of super tanker. I mean, it's just a tiny, like unfeasibly small propeller for that kind of size of ship. So I guess like things have really changed in maritime design.
When did it sink, actually? How old is the wreck?
It's very recent. I don't remember. I mean, recent, we're talking about in the region of 10 or 15 years. It hasn't been very much at all. But, you know, compared to a World War II wreck, 70, 80 years, and then World War I, 100 years, it's relatively recent. So
yeah.
Was it purposely sunk? Sorry, or is it?
A fire broke out on board, and then they tried to bring it back to shore, but it was actually like towed back because it was a gas tanker, and they were worried about explosions, and they towed it. They towed it in, but then towed it back offshore again. I mean, offshore, it's a mile offshore, and that they towed it back because they were worried about like it exploding and hurting people in reality. So that's a crazy wreck. Let's see if we can. All right, we've done that one already. But you can see a little bit here of some of the visibility there on the tower. I mean, it's just incredible. And this dive would be about 35 meters there in the foreground, and up to 20 there on the top of the superstructure. And all that area is available for penetration. You know, I mean, it just, like I said, I've done a few dives there in the region of 5 or 6, but not you know, gonna start getting inside. But you could run out 100 meters of line inside this wreck easily. I don't know if you can see over on the left of the shot, it's actually the wing of the bridge, and it would have sat out like this, but because it was on fire, it actually melted. It drooped down, which is kind of interesting. So loads of interesting thing to see on see the visibility. You can see the diver there, and there's some bridge on the deck level to get over the pipes, and you know, it just sort of blue water that we would think of from Asian diving, but they're in the Med. So yeah, fantastic diving and accessible to almost everybody in terms of like there's a depth for everybody, and just a fantastic dive. And I think like this Genoa coastline is super interesting. Loads of really cool wrecks there.
So how did you? I mean, you there was a dive shop, or is it this a place you also dove off, Andrew? Right, when you were in Italy, or was it a different place?
Yeah, but I didn't dive this wreck, but we were close by, right? Is this close by where we were?
I'd say the Haven is less than an hour drive from Finale Liguri, which is where we were staying when we went there. And then here's another like Ligurian wreck. like a lot of people complain about diving on subs, but this is the U455. Again, just off Genoa, and interestingly enough, it's like a rammed in 45 degrees to the bottom, which is just crazy. And up there at the top, I don't know if my cursor's showing there, but you can see, you can see a line, and that's the line up to the buoy that the dive boat's tied to. And there's some sort of debate over why the sub is like at this angle. And one thought is that there's actually air, you know, the pressure compartment is still airtight, and the front is full of air. And we were joking, like, can you imagine if you accidentally kicked the valve, the air leaked from the system, and then like the sub went to the bottom, but the dive boat is actually attached to the sub. So you, as you're coming up, the dive boat would be coming down, which would be kind of a strange thing, I would say. But, you know, again, we talk about the visibility. The top of this sub is 87 meters, so right there at the top. Okay. And then the bottom of the sub is 117 meters. So, I mean, it's just a fantastic sort of vertical dive site. And like I said, a lot of people complain about diving on subs, but this is a really, really nice sub, and well worth going to see if you get the chance.
This is a World War II sub, I assume, right?
Yeah. And then there you can sort of see the sub rammed into the bottom, and the conning tower or the fin. I don't remember if, you know, the maritime architects get angry if you call it a conning tower when it's a fin, and it depends what generation the sub is. But the bit that sticks out of the submarine, you can see sort of disappearing off into the murk, and 117 meters there to the bottom. So like super, like pretty deep. And then
so this one, you know, was sunk, I guess, in the Second World War, right? I assume.
Yep. And it broke into two small parts, and this is like the stern, the actual stern, although the propeller wasn't visible, but you know, rammed into the bottom. I mean, it's like super interesting dive, and again, like relatively easy in terms of conditions and things like that. So like really good visibility and benign in terms of current, but obviously the depth of the dive makes it so you use a little bit of a challenge.
CCR, I assume, for this dive?
CCR?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so this is we were on the boat with 7 or 8 Italians who were diving in let's say factory configurations. And my German friend Steff and I were diving on the GUE configuration. But I mean, you can probably have a heated podcast with any equipment configuration you liked. It's not my intention to say one is better than the other. It's just what we were diving. So that's some like cool dives to look at for if you were to travel to Italy. And then like talk about mango shakes after diving, I would say the food in Italy is pretty nice as well. So post dive and pizza, and you know, I mean Aperol Spritz, aperitivo, and things like that. It's just fantastic and very nice. So it could be a trip that you could bring the wife, girlfriend, or the other way around. If you're a diving lady, you could bring your fella, or you know, it's modern times. You could bring your partner, and they could have fun even if they weren't a diver, for example. So that's super nice.
We went and had dinner around near the castle. There was a castle there. I think we.
Yeah, that's right. Finalborgo, the castle in Finale Liguri. I mean, it's just it's stunning, beautiful, right?
Yeah, it was really stunning. And in the summer, I mean, yeah, the food was awesome. And I just remember every morning having to go for a run just to justify the amount of food I eat evening, even though we were doing some pretty loaded with the diving. And I was you know,
I know it's really crazy there. Like, it's a real like fun place to go on holiday. And I know for you guys it's a 10 or 11-hour flight from Hong Kong. But if you're in Europe with family or something, it's well worth seeing if you can get a few days to dive in this Italian region.
What do you think, Graham? From southern Germany, 5-6 hour drive should be okay, right? I guess
it's 7 hours from Karlsruhe.
Okay.
So I'm guessing 6 hours probably from Munich or something like that. So like my friend who lives in Karlsruhe, he sort of said, well, you would think being based in the middle, pretty much geographically in the middle of continental Europe, it would be a terrible place to dive. But actually, he's like 7 hours drive from everywhere. So like 7 hours from Croatia, 7 hours from Italy, 7 hours from the French caves. He can get up to the North Sea in 7 hours. It's really like the middle point of everywhere. So, I mean, 7 hours seems like a lot, but to be honest, it takes more than 7 hours to get to Porto Galera from Hong Kong. By the time you've checked in and waited for an hour, hour and a half, flown for a couple of hours, waited an hour to pick your bags up, fought the traffic to get out of Manila, got on the ferry, you're probably looking at 10 hours minimum on a really clean run to get to Porto Galera. So it sounds a lot, but it's not in reality quite as far as what you think. And then, of course, in normal times, you could fly everywhere. So down to Milan or Genoa from Heathrow would be an hour, hour and a half flight, and then it starts to become quite easy. If only we hadn't voted for Brexit, it would be even easier. So again, we're not here to discuss politics and things, but that's another topic for heated debate.
Another podcast.
Right? Yeah,
exactly.
For another podcast.
But since we're talking of like diving, let's have a look at some of the Irish wrecks as well.
Yeah, you went to Malin Head.
That sounds cool. Yeah, so Malin Head, it's in Ireland proper, so Éire, the Republic of Ireland, and then there's 3 counties of Ireland which form Northern Ireland, which is nominally part of the UK, but Malin Head is actually the northernmost tip of Ireland. And it's even further north than Northern Ireland, so it's a little bit confusing. But basically, it's mid-Atlantic, sort of. That possibly gives an idea of the visibility. And I've been diving here a number of times, and this is at 70 meters, and you can sort of see the scale of the visibility. And this is a liner which was recommissioned as a naval vessel called the Justicia, and it's a World War I wreck. Yeah. And you can see the difference in prop design compared to the Haven. And the Haven is nominally twice as long. So in terms of displacement, probably 8 or 10 or maybe even more times bigger, but the Justicia had multiple props like this, and you can see the difference in size and design there. But really, it's the visibility that makes Malin amazing. So that's a prop shot of this beautiful wreck, the Justicia, in 70 meters. So again, like the visibility here, you can see again, like incredible visibility. This is at 40 meters as we're coming up to do decompression. The eagle-eyed of you might see a little bit of something on the line there, and that's actually the station for the lazy shot. So you pull a pin, and then the decompression station drifts. Everybody drifts together. So the visibility incredible.
But rough conditions, right? I mean, it could be quite strong currents.
Can be, can be well, current tends not to be too bad, but the ocean swells can be quite dramatic. But I've dived out there in 3 or 4 meter swells, and it feels flat calm. Because the waves are so far apart, you don't actually feel yourself going up and down. And the boats are much more worried about smaller waves, which are closer together. So that's you know, this is the front of this ship, like looking forward, and you can see like the hawsers, the anchor chains going through the hawser pipes, and the bow here. And I thought I'd saved a picture of the bow of the Justice bow, some idea of the visibility in this kind of 70-meter diving. So you don't just have to be in the tropics to see this fantastic visibility. And I mean, this is just a fantastic wreck, 200 meters long, and really, like, you feel like this is real tech diving, scootering along, rebreathers, and like just amazing scenery. And we sort of look at some of the stuff that we can see. We talked about this King George V battleship, the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. Well, this is the HMS Audacious. So another King George battleship, but that is its B turret is actually inverted when it sunk and fallen upside down onto the bottom. And I always get this wrong. I can't remember whether it's 13 or 14 inch, but you know, the shells are as big as a diver in reality that this bad boy was firing, and just incredible to see it there on the bottom. And interestingly enough, you mentioned Andy Dyer earlier in the podcast. Might be edited out, but I just remember like looking at a dive magazine from the UK. I think it was called 990, and now a person I know, Lee Bishop, probably call him a friend, and if you can get him on your podcast, he'd be a really interesting person for you to chat to. But I remember his pictures from the late 90s, like looking at those with Andy Dyer and thinking, whoa, I just can't believe this diving. I've got to go there like at some point. And 20 years later, we're here diving on this wreck, and the bottom of the Audacious is 60 something, 61, 62, I think, at the deepest point. But because of the visibility, you can do like a mid-50s app dive, and just on this real like wreck dive with loads of interesting real stuff to see. I mean, you know, we talk about like the scale of these battleships, but that is what remains of the bow of this enormous warship behemoth. And basically the forward armory exploded during the sinking, and the bow was blown off, and that's all that remains of it. So you can see like the pointy bit of the bow pretty much lying in rubble there on the bottom. And it's just like you're swimming around this history lesson basically. And you know, if anybody ever wanted to get into naval history and things like that, is lying there on the bottom in front of you to enjoy, which is just incredible. I mean, it's just amazing. And I think like another one like that really displays like this idea of naval history, and I think
the tanks, I guess, on the side.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some Sherman tanks there. There's a load of armored personnel carriers and things like that. But again, at 65, 67 meters, something like that, just like it's like a child has scattered his like toy soldiers there on the bottom, but it's like grown-up size. And I think like you can see a cluster of like 3 or 4 divers over here, and I think they found a nudibranch or something to look at, because obviously there's something super interesting to look at on these wrecks. But just like unbelievable. And you're just like looking at this going, it's just amazing. So I mean, Malin, go back to the cold water. It's like diving in the worst of Hong Kong winters, like 13 degrees or something like that. So it's definitely like doable, and you know, you can definitely brush off those thick undersuits and come and get some awesome diving in here in Ireland. It's just super incredible, just a slightly different angle of the same shot. And also in Ireland we have subs. They have subs too. So that's the bow of the U2506, and actually there's only two. I think they're Type 21. So Andy, being German, you might understand a bit more of the U-boat histories, but I think they're Type 21 subs. There's only two of them that are diveable in the world, and I think they're called electroboots, so electric submarines basically, or electric boats. Only two of them diveable, and they're actually both in Malin Head. So we had 3 Germans on the last trip I did this summer, and they were super excited to dive on this quite unusual sub.
So Graham, if somebody wants to, I mean, somebody wants to come to Europe and dive, I mean, do you run trips and, you know, to Italy or to Malin Head? I mean, you know, they can contact you, or you can put something together.
Yeah.
What is the?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, get in touch. I generally have a couple of weeks every summer in Malin Head, and when I go to Italy 2 or 3 times a year, and the diving in Italy is a bit easier in terms of like logistic support, because every 20 or 30 kilometers there's a port, and each one of them seem to have a dive center. There's a couple of GU instructors that are in the Genoa region. There may even be 3, and they can all certainly help with diving. Like Marco Coleman, who runs Sickness Dive Center, is the place that I go to, but there's also Bruno, who runs Portofino Divers, which is fantastic also, that you can go and have a look at. I think the Malin thing is more, it's a little bit like doing a land-based liveaboard, in that it's quite difficult to turn up and go diving, if that makes sense. You'd probably have to arrange to get on a trip, as it were, so it's a little bit more project level of things. But I've got 2 weeks next summer, and you guys are welcome to join, and I've pretty much got everything you'd need for a GUE rigged CCI. You just bring your canister, the scrubber canister. I've got the shells already, and and the head of the rebreather and a dry suit, and we can get you in the water and go diving.
Just need to go to Mexico and pick it up.
Oh right, your CCR's in Mexico.
Yeah, well, so if Kelvin listens to this, either he comes to the UK and brings it to me, or I have to go.
Mine's in Hong Kong, so I'm okay. You know, Andy, your stuff, you can't do it. Sorry, mate.
No.
But you basically left your stuff in Mexico, expecting to go back in a few weeks or months' time, and then 2 years later, it's still being looked after by Kelvin.
Last time I was there is
February 2020.
January, February 2020, and I expected to go back 2 months or 3 months later, that's as far as it went. And I know Kelvin takes good care of it, and I hope he's diving it once in a while to make sure it works.
I'm sure he is. I saw that he's just been doing some diving in America, like the Great Lakes. So I'm sure he'll have some cold water stories to tell you when you guys link up and stuff like that. So it's Kelvin's a super cool guy, and it's a really small world, isn't it? Like again, you know, I'm in the UK. We're talking about a Kiwi guy who now lives in Mexico, to a German, and how do you identify it, Andrew? Are you Hong Kong, or are you British, or mix, or what's
I like to think of myself as a hybrid.
There you go.
Best of both worlds.
I'm the best of both worlds.
Yeah, the Prius of the diving world, is it?
Yeah, I'm the Prius of the diving world. Yeah, you know, not quite the BMW i8 version, but I am the Prius.
Yeah, no, that's super cool, and
yeah, but that's the way it is. Well, I mean, Graham, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you and just listening to your stories, and of course we've known each other. I've listened to your stories over and over again. I mean, I'm a bit tired of it, to be honest, but I'm sure there's a few viewers out there who are going to be, you know, now champing at the bit to go to Italy, to go to Malin Head, come out to Asia, and just, you know what, just experience what there is out there. And it just goes to show, like, we're based in Hong Kong, you're in the UK, and you know, there's so much out there that is available for you when you just want to go diving, right? And you know,
that's right. And I guess that's what we can sort of encourage people to broaden their horizons. And I think it's fantastic to have your local diving or your favorite holiday spot. But that's one of the things that I'm really happy the places my diving's taken me, and I encourage all of you to look a bit further afield and broaden your diving experiences, and you know, you really it pays dividends, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to Guy a few episodes, on one of our previous episodes, and he was talking about, like, you know, how a lot of divers just go and they train. They go training, course, and never actually do what we got into diving for, right? And just looking at your pictures there. I mean, it's even for me. I
want to go there now.
Yeah, I want to go. Right? And it's like it's picking back this enthusiasm, this love, or this draw, whatever it was that got me into diving. And it's just like seeing these pictures. Yeah. I want to go there, and it's like takes me back to that 23-year-old boy sitting on the young man sitting on the beach waving goodbye to like a bunch of like grizzly old men who, and I'm going to say grizzly old men because you were old to me at that time.
Older even now, right?
Yeah. And you know,
but I would say, like,
yeah.
I mean, people I expect, oh, you're a GU instructor, you must really love like valve drills, but in reality, if I never had to see another valve drill or do one, I'm pretty happy. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are important, but I'd rather that we develop skills to allow us to go diving instead of spend the whole time doing more and more practice. So, you know, I really hate it when people get out of the water and they ask me, oh, how was my trim? It's like, dude, did you see the wreck or the whale shark or the corals? Or like, I don't really mind for your trim of generally. I mean, there are times where it's super important, but I'm much more into enjoying the dive and talking about like the cool stuff you saw on the dive than how my form was in the water, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I know, you know, Andy probably speak for you, but yeah, you feel the same way. It's one of those things, and you know, we are GU instructors, and that's you know, we obviously we enjoy and like the training aspect of it, but that's not the be all and end all, right? It's about getting out there, experiencing these places, and the fact is, what we hope to do with this podcast is just bring people around the world to, you know, and open up the exposure so that people know just what is out there, right? It's there and pretty easy to attain, really, in relative terms of things, when we can travel, of course. But
that's right.
Certainly when we can travel. I mean, my gear is already packed. Actually, it's ready to be shipped back to the UK, where a lot of it will stay. And yes, there probably will be a set of twin tanks that will be arriving on my doorstep at some stage, and some CCR tanks, because I need another set. Because of course, I only have like three already. I need a fourth one somewhere.
But what is it they say? Like, I hope when I die, my wife doesn't sell my equipment for what I told her I paid for it. I think that's like very true, right?
Yeah, very, very true. Yeah. So anyway, but I think that's pretty much all we've got time for today. But again, thank you, Graham, for
thanks so much
coming on the podcast and just sharing some of your stories. And when we reach season 2, we'll have you back on, and it's sharing some more of your exciting stories. I'm sure you've been to Malin Head again, been to Italy again, and talk some about your courses that you've been running as well.
No, I hope I can share some more and new experiences, and it's been super fun catching up with you guys, and I miss you guys and all my friends in Asia and around the world. So I hope that COVID allows travel again, right?
We can have a virtual hug, don't you worry, mate.
There you go.
Well, I hope to see you next month in Germany if it works out, Graham. So
that would be great.
That would be great.
Super cool. Okay, enjoy your evening, and nice to speak to you.
Nice catching up.
Cheers, mate.
Cool.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.